Hi everybody, it's Susan from Sunrise Quilt Studio, and today I decided I want to do some embroidery on the Christmas Cottage quilt blocks. If you remember these from December. And I hope you'll stick around and I'll show you how I'm going to do this. Hi everybody, it's Susan from Sunrise Quilt Studio. Today I'm going to start doing the embroidery work on some of the Christmas Cottage quilt blocks, and I hope you'll stick around and I'll show you what I'm going to do with these. After I put all of my blocks up on the design wall and decided what order I wanted them to go in, and then decided it was time to pick out some thread. So you know, I could change thread color with each color in all of the appliques, but that would be a lot of thread color changing, and that's not really a lot of fun, and I'm not wanting this project to be a chore. So I decided that since all of these fabrics have metallics in them, they have either silver or they have gold, that I would stick with silver and gold thread. So that's just two color changes, and that way I can go through each block and do all the gold and then all the silver, or you know, vice versa, whichever way appeals to me. So that's what I'm going to do. And so I went through my threads and I picked out some colors that I had that I thought would work well. I have this is a white, it's kind of a shimmery. These are all Gutermann threads. This one's a silver, and then I have 4 golds, and then this one is actually a metallic. And I've actually used this one on my long arm and it worked fine. So though I don't think I'm going to use this one. I think I want to stick with the rayon, and I'm just going to eliminate this one right away. As far as the golds, any of these would work. I think the closest match to the gold in this quilt though is this one. These two are a bit too gold, if that makes any sense. It's just a deeper gold than what is in the metallic on the fabric, but actually it's probably not going to matter. It's not going to make a whole lot of difference. This one really works really well too. So I've got these 2 threads here, so I've kind of narrowed them down to these 2, and I think what I'll do is just do a sample on a piece of scrap and decide what I want. So I got a choice between those 2. And then for the silver, let me find a, well, the silver is in this block here, you can see that, and this would work well. The white is going to be a little bit brighter, so I think I'm going to go with that. So I have the choice, have to make a choice between these 2 golds and this silver, or just use these interchangeably. There's no reason why I can't. So if you want to know the colors, this is 1440. This one here is 1195, and this one is 9740. So these are all Gutermann 100% viscose, which is rayon. And I bought these in 220 yard spools. So not an incredibly amount of thread there, but I'm hoping this will get me through the project. So I'm going to go ahead and get a scrap of some fabric that has the gold in it and run a couple test samples, and we'll see what they look like. Okay, so I have loaded up number 1440, and I'm going to do a couple of stitches. I haven't decided which stitch I want to use yet either, so that's also an issue, but I'm going to start with number 27, and I'm just going to quilt right in, or quilt, I'm going to sew right in this section that has metallic, and we'll see how well that blends. And I just have a 40 weight off-white thread, Actually, it's a 50 weight. I have a 50 weight off-white thread in my bobbin. It's the same thread I've been using for piecing quilts. So let's see what this looks like. And right now I'm just sewing over one layer of fabric. Let's see what that looks like. Oh, it looks pretty nice. Okay, here is that stitch. I don't know if you can see it right in there. I can get a little bit closer. So actually that goes pretty well, I think. I don't know that the other thread will be much different, but let's do a different stitch. I don't have anything backing this, so it really needs actually another layer of fabric or stabilizer underneath it to lie flat, but I don't have that on there. Okay, let me try the blanket stitch, which is 21, and I'm going to drop that down to 3 and 2, so it's a smaller stitch. And we'll look at that one. And that looks good too. Actually, that thread goes really well with the metallic in there. So let me switch colors now and see what the other one looks like. This thread is a little bit lighter in color. So let me go ahead and do the blanket stitch since I've already got that one keyed in. And then I'm going to switch over right away. I'll do the same stitch I was doing before, which was 27. And I think these two look good too, so it's really not going to matter. And there's the newer thread, the lighter. This is the lighter thread. So that looks pretty good. And then here's the darker thread. And that looks good too. So it's really not going to matter which one. And if I run out of one, I can always switch over to the other. So I think I'm going to start with the darker thread, and if I run out, then I'll switch over to the lighter thread. So I'm going to go ahead and take the, I'll switch the thread around and start doing some embroidery. I'm going to do some embroidery on the roof of this house. And I just need to choose my stitch, and I think I'm going to use different stitches throughout this project. I'm not going to use the same stitch all the way through. I just want to have a little fun. So I'm on stitch 27. I think I'll go ahead and use that, but I'm going to make it a little bit narrower. So I'm going to, okay. And what I'm doing is I'm having the stitch go just right off of the edge of the applique. Trying to get it to stop. There we go. Okay, let's take a closer look at that. Okay, I've decided this stitch is a little bit hard turning corners. You see right here, I kind of went up into the sky fabric on that corner as well as over here. So this is a stitch that I'm not that familiar with, and but I do like the look. I like that line of the gold thread along the top here, so I like that. So it's going to take some adjusting, and I may need to use a different stitch. This stitch goes forward and backward a lot, and I haven't quite figured out exactly when it's going to go backward, and each time I turn the corner, with this one it was more of a matter of getting the needle going in the right spot, and I just had it off. It just needed to be down a little bit further into the blue fabric. Over here I thought I had figured out the timing of when the stitches were going to go backwards, but I didn't, and so they went back into the sky fabric. So anyway, there is, let's see, back up a little bit more. There we go. So there is the embroidery work. This is stitch number 27 on the Singer Patchwork sewing machine. So on this block, the only other thing that has gold in it is the frame around the door, and the purpose of the embroidery is to protect the raw edges. Now this is fused down, and it should help prevent it from fraying. If this quilt ever gets washed, though, it could do some fraying. I don't plan on washing it, but you never know what's going to happen down the line years from now. And I don't know. I just like the idea of embroidery on applique. I just think it looks pretty, and I like having the edges covered, just a little extra security. So I am going to pick another stitch and do the frame of the door. So I'm going to go ahead and do 21. And okay, I've got that. It automatically went back to the stitch width that I had set before. So I'm going to go ahead and do a blanket stitch. Okay, I am getting close to where I need to turn, so I'm stopping with my needle down, and it's down on the outside of the applique, so it's in the background. And stop and lift my presser foot as I need to. And I'm watching the needle where it's landing. So instead of watching the center of the foot, I'm watching the needle. Okay, now I can speed up because I'm on the straight stretch. Okay, I'm going to turn. Turn again. And then go up the other side. Here is the blanket stitch done on the door. trim there. Turn it right side up, maybe that makes some more sense. So there we go. Okay, everything else on this block has silver metallic on it, all the fabrics. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the roof trim here, and since this is narrow, I'm going to go ahead and do a blanket stitch on that. I'll do a blanket stitch on the window frames too, since they're narrow. As I work through the blocks, I probably will come up with a solution or kind of a recipe, maybe is the correct word, for what kind of stitch I'm going to put where. I do like these wider, more decorative stitches on the roof here. I do like that, and on maybe on big stretches like on the body of the house, maybe that would be good. For little narrow pieces, since I want to cover both edges, then I think I need to do something I can get really narrow, like the blanket stitch. So I think I'll go ahead and do that. So I'm still dialed in for a blanket stitch. So I'm just going to get started on that. I'm going to leave my needle in and I'm going to turn. Okay, one thing you can do, I'm going to stop with my needle up. If I want to backstitch to secure my stitches, I can go back to my straight stitch. Okay, and then I just need to adjust to get my needle right in the background fabric, and I'm going to go forward a few stitches and then back. If I hit the right key, it would help. Okay. And so there, I don't have to tie off any stitches. So, okay. So, right here, I turned this corner and came back up to get this little piece that was overlapping this one that needed some stitches on it too. So I came back around to grab those, and then I switched over to a straight stitch and then went forward a couple of stitches and then back. So I back stitched to secure the rayon thread, the embroidery thread. So now I need to go back. I need to get the stitches down, or I need to do a line of stitching down here, and then I need to grab and go back and do this side too. So I'm going to go back over here and dial in 21 again. Well, no. Okay, I'm going to stay at 0, and I'm going to go forward. I'm going to make sure I'm in a right spot. I'm going to go forward a few stitches and back a few stitches. Okay, now I'm going to dial in 21 and adjust my foot, and then do my blanket stitch. Okay, so here is the roof line now. So I've got that all stitched, and now I'm going to go around the house. Okay, so on the edge of the house, I think I'll go ahead and let's do 75. And we'll try this one and see how this turns out. quite a large stitch. I did stitch number 75 around the edges of the house. I'm not real certain I care a whole lot for that stitch. I mean, it's okay. It's just, I don't know. And it went quickly, which is a plus. But there, I don't know if you can see it through there. Now, one thing I wanted to point out is that I am not using stabilizer on these, and that's because these are fused down, and the fusible material, the fusible web, gives enough weight and stability to the fabric that it really doesn't need a stabilizer. So that's the reason I didn't do that. So okay, I'm going to do blanket stitch on everything else, so I'm going to go dial that in, and we'll get this block done. Okay, so here is the completed embroidered block. All the embroidery is done on it now, and I think it turned out pretty well. It does take quite a bit of time. I would have to say I've been working on this, let's see what my 56 minutes, so almost an hour to do the embroidery on this block. So yeah, it's slow work. It's there's really no way to speed it up unless you're really comfortable with your machine and the embroidery stitches. But when you have to turn corners or curves and corners, you know, you've got to slow down to do that. So you can just, you know, stop and think how much stitching is in there. That's quite a bit. So I think it turned out really well though, and it did give me an idea on how I'm going to go forward with the other blocks. I am going to do the blanket stitch on all the narrow pieces like the door frames and window frames and, you know, little roof trims, and then maybe do something bigger on bigger sections like the roof and around the house. And I decided the reason I didn't like this stitch here is just because it's not very dense. It's a loose stitch. I like something that's going to show up a little bit better, but this will go faster. But there's a lot of back and forth with that, and there's a lot of back and forth with this one. So I'm going to try out a couple of different stitches before I move forward and see if I can find something that isn't going back and forth quite so much, and maybe I can control it better. So anyway, here is my start on the embroidery for the Christmas Cottage quilt blocks, and once I get them all embroidered, then I will put the quilt top together. So that's one thing you might consider. It is easier to do your embroidery in the block form as opposed to the quilt top form. So you might want to do all your embroidery first and then put your blocks together into your top. So anyway, I hope this was helpful, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. For more quilting ideas, click on the video links. And to keep up with my latest projects, click on the subscribe button. I hope to see you again soon.